Hi, friends. Welcome back to Transform the Now. I'm Nate Pally, hanging out with Tucker Boyle. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Nate.
Sweet. Hope you guys are doing well. Hey, we're going to try and lay a foundation for some spiritual practices here. And one of the first spiritual practices we want you to understand is that you can watch your thoughts. And I know that sounds like an obvious thing. Like I grew up like thinking my thoughts are completely me, which was disturbing sometimes because my thoughts weren't always like amazing. Like I remember working as a bagger at Macy's thinking I could totally rob this place. And I was like, this is me. Like, that's not a good meme. That's not a good look right there, right?
But maybe that's a gift of yours that needs to be developed, Nate. I don't know. Don't count it
Dude,
out.
me and George Clooney, we're gonna go take on some heists, if you will, Italian
Grocery store heists, right?
grocery
Grocery.
store eyes. Nothing says big money like grocery stores, right? Oh man, let's see. I wasn't even like casing the right joints going on. So just this idea, like to realize that there is something separate. Like I was reading a book and they talked about how you can make your brain say hello and then you can listen to it as almost a third party. So I tried it. I was like, hello. And in my brain, it was like, hello, hello. I was like, wait a minute. It was just this revelatory thing that there is something that can observe my thoughts, and that all these automatic thoughts and arguments and dramas and other things going on in my head aren't necessarily who I am. And I know me and you have talked about this a little bit. So talk to me about your experience of coming to understand that you're not necessarily your thoughts, or that there is this difference, there's this space almost.
Yeah, beautiful. I really believe that this is one of the most pivotal things along the spiritual path that accelerates growth and transformation. To understand that we are not our thoughts, that there's something in me, call it consciousness, call it my spirit, call it the observer or the witness that is separate from my thoughts, so that maybe the thoughts are clouds and the witness or observer or spirit is the sky. And these thoughts are something that pass along, but aren't necessarily something that we inhabit. Um, Sometimes the analogy of a movie, of, you know how you're watching a movie and you just get so pulled into it that you become unconscious of the fact that you're watching a movie. It just draws you in. The same things happen. The same thing happens with our thoughts, and we just get so pulled into them that we don't even realize that there is a part of our being, maybe even call it being itself, that can observe the thoughts, that doesn't have to be drawn in, that can have an objective viewpoint of those thoughts. And I know that sounds like a small thing, but it is revolutionary. I remember where I was standing when I came to this realization. I was doing a home improvement project at my house, and all of a sudden, my thoughts became separate from my consciousness, and I started to watch them, and something fundamental shifted inside of me, and it was super exciting. And since then, I've been able to start to practice doing that purposely, step back from my thoughts. And it's been incredible what a shift it's made and how it's opened up things for me in life and given me a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced before that.
Well, and you talking about getting sucked into them, like I think that's real. I think most of us, for most of the time, don't even realize that we're having this nonstop conversation of either a verbal thing or images going on almost all the time. It's just part of who we are. Like I think even some people are be like, no, I don't do that. But the voice inside that just said, no, I don't do that is the voice we're talking about. Right?
Yeah, Michael Singer calls it the roommate in your head, right?
Right.
And should we do a quick practice really quick, Nate? And
Yeah.
yeah, anybody that's listening to this podcast, just take a few silent moments and listen for the roommate in your head or the narrator in your head, and see if something pops up. Let's just take a little time to just sit there and observe and see what comes up. Okay. I'll tell you what happened for me. I don't know what happened for everybody else listening, but during that initial silence, there was nothing. And it's actually this beautiful, peaceful moment for a second. And then the roommate is like, so how long are we going to sit here?
Well, I was like, is he supposed to end it or am I supposed to end it?
Right. And there is a narrator that is like, really, Tucker, are you just going to let this go on for like a full minute? This is dead silence during a podcast or whatever. But in that moment, the cool thing is like, I knew that wasn't me, the fundamental me. That was this part of our brain that is part of our humanity that generates these thoughts and can be super helpful in our life and can be a bit of a barrier sometimes, right? If we don't have the ability or get this ability to separate ourselves from the narrator. I don't know if any of you have a really critical narrator in your head or a really, stress-inducing narrator or a lot of anxiety that comes from this, but you might take some time to practice this and listen to the roommate or the narrator in your head and try to pick up what is the influence that narrator has on you and your mood and what's going on in life. And it can be a really transformative thing.
And I would say that's the spiritual practice we're advocating today. Listen to this narrator in your head and just observe it. Because sometimes just getting a vibe for the sort of things they're saying can help you know if they're credible or not. Like if you had an actual human being say some of the things that this narrator said in your mind, you would punch them in the throat. You wouldn't, Tucker, because you're nice. I would, because I got problems like that. But like if somebody really was just that mean or that critical or that just annoying all the time, like you would do something to change that relationship. And so I think the first step is just to take some time to recognize what is going on here and to create some appropriate distance to be able to observe that and see the credibility there.
Yeah, beautiful concept, Nate. Create some distance there. In that distance, there is freedom, there is power, there is all of a sudden you become an actor in your life. And by actor, what I mean, not somebody that's faking something, but you get to like take the direction of your life and your thoughts. And there's this incredible liberation that happens as you start to see that maybe your mind is a tool that you can pick up and put down when you need to. That is so powerful. I almost want to just pause and say, if this is the one spiritual practice that you learn from listening to this podcast, I just want to shout hurrah for this whole experience, because you will find freedom and liberty in that. And we might call this your egoic mind, right? Our mind develops this sense of self, this identity that it puts out in the world. And it's really not your true self. That's your false self that your egoic mind has built for you. It's an identity that you put out there and your mind tries to maintain. And if you can step back from that and see it from that broader observer perspective, you are going to find some incredible freedom from stress, freedom from suffering. And it is a beautiful spiritual practice.
And it's kind of crazy because the good things about you just become magnified, and some of those things that you find detrimental almost diminish naturally in this process. It's kind of cool. So let's just be super clear. So just start today, start this week, just watch, just pay attention. Pay attention to the narration, pay attention to the visual images, pay attention to the arguments, the justifications, just whatever comes up, just let it be. And don't think that you've got to fix it, if that makes sense. Just pay attention that it's there, and start seeing that you can do that. Does that sound good to you there, Tucker? Or
Yeah, that sounds great. Can I give a couple of the fruits that I've seen from this in others as I've worked with people with this?
For sure.
I have seen a lot of people feel less shame. Sometimes when we think that we are our thoughts and that's our identity and we can do nothing about it, we start to beat ourselves up. Like, why would I think that way? What is wrong with me? And
what is wrong with me, right?
yeah, and that shame I've seen start to disappear from people's lives as they have learned this practice of watching your thoughts, observing them, and recognizing that they are causing pain, difficulty, suffering, and things for you, but you don't have to engage in that pain, difficulty, and suffering. And so this is kind of a fascinating thought. It's hard to describe. It's easier to experience than it is to teach, right? So I hope this is a helpful thing. I've seen this help people overcoming habits that they want to get rid of, that they thought the habits were them. But now that they can step back in these moments and be like, hey, I'm having a desire or an urge to do this thing that has been kind of imprisoning me. But as they learn to separate their thoughts, and I'll even add, you are not your feelings either.
Yeah, that's big.
And you can turn and be the observer and watch your feelings. In fact, let me invite everybody listening to do that for a second. Will you just, instead of looking, using your consciousness to look at the outside world right now, will you just pause and rotate your consciousness inward and observe your feelings? What are you feeling right now? Like, what emotions are coming up from you? Where are you feeling that in your body? You might be feeling some tension somewhere. Maybe it's in your chest and your shoulders. Maybe you're feeling some anxiety somewhere. Don't get pulled into the feeling. Just watch it. Something so transformative starts to happen as we start to be able to separate our consciousness, our spirit, our attention from our feelings and thoughts. And Nate, I don't know how to describe this. Sometimes in these spiritual practices, it goes so far beyond words that I can do my best to point to it. But for me, oftentimes when I engage in this practice of looking inside, sometimes I'll discover a feeling of discomfort or something that is an unconscious thing, and I don't even know why it's there. But as I observe it, it kind of melts away. It's kind of like wax that just melts in the warmth of my presence or my consciousness. And I do this several times a day, every day. And I'll stop and just watch my feelings, watch my thoughts. And oftentimes I'll feel a wall that's between me and somebody else dissolve, and I'll feel forgiveness take its place. Or I'll feel a barrier of anxiety or stress, and I'll just stay there as the watcher, and I'll feel that stress and anxiety disappear, dissolve. I don't even know how to describe it. It evaporates. I'm not saying it happens that easy for everything. There's different magnitudes of emotion, and those can take a little bit or a lot more time to process. But just sitting in the place as a watcher, the watcher is powerful. I think Jesus in the New Testament, when he says the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, is talking about this separation, right? We have this spiritual part of us that is often pulled into the weakness of the flesh. But if we can stay in that willing spiritual place, a lot of the weakness of the flesh will have less power over us. Is that an okay description?
Yeah. Well, and I found this particularly useful with some of the strong emotions that you're talking about, like anxiety. For some of you that have felt anxiety before, it can be so easy to get sucked into this feeling of helplessness, and it's like a tornado inside of you almost. And the more you focus on it, the more you build, and you just want it to end. But it's crazy how, in observing this and taking a step back, we use the analogy of a roommate before. Sometimes when I watch my own personal anxiety, it's like a toddler throwing a fit and raging and throwing things. And when there's just a little bit of distance and observation, suddenly it goes from being a tornado to a 2-year-old, and it becomes much, I don't know. I was like, oh, you're just throwing crap inside my mind. Okay, you're gonna have to clean that up later. I don't like it. It's so much less powerful to suck me in. And then I don't know, the 2-year-old in my brain winds down a little bit, sits down exhausted, and I can move on with my life so much quicker than when I got sucked into that whirlwind before. Like, just watching it, observing it, and relaxing into it, and not necessarily even trying to like, oh, I got to do this, this, and this to not feel so stressed anymore. Just letting it be. And then that evaporation, that melting, it's a natural state that we receive that's quite powerful, that you're not having to create.
Yeah, beautiful description, Nate. I find myself smiling at my mind sometimes. Have you ever done that?
Oh, totally. Especially where I'm in this, right there. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Yeah. So I totally just resonate with that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting experience to like watch your thoughts and just be like, that's kind of childish, Tucker. and having that separation is so empowering. So I'm excited for people to try this.
And let me give you just a caution right here. Like, and Tucker has just said, hey, that's pretty childish, Tucker. Be careful, like, because we're going to have an automatic, like, tendency to judge ourselves and our thoughts right there.
Oh, good point.
And so, like, just let it be sometimes. Just watch it and let it run out without having to say, this is good, or this is bad, or this is childish, or this is adult-like, or this is enlightened, this is unenlightened. Just kind of let it be and relax into it. And naturally, you'll watch it transform, and you will transform the now in that process. And it's something that will just happen naturally. Would you agree with that? Or
Oh, absolutely. That's so great. Like sometimes you start like judging your mind and calling it names like childish and things like that. And that just increases some shame and doesn't help you get anywhere. So staying non-judgmentally as the observer, that non-judgmental state is really important, because I think what happens once we start to judge it and give it a name is it sucks us into thought. That's our egoic mind that likes to judge things, that likes to separate the world into good and bad, and into us and them and those things. But if we can stay as an observer and just kind of, you can smile at it. You don't need to judge it or shame it or anything like that, but just be separate from it and watch what happens as you keep that distance.
And give yourself some time to practice. Like all things, these spiritual practices, like it takes time to learn the piano. It takes time to learn a sport. And these spiritual practices, these mental practices, these soul being practices, they'll take time. So let yourself have time in them, and just try it out. See what happens when you try it out, and then try it again.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think as we practice this, you start to increase in compassion for yourself and others. You start to feel more love. Naturally, when you step back from your thoughts, you'll start to sink into a place of deeper peace in your life and be able to let your thoughts be thoughts and let stress, like, I just feel so much less stress since I've practiced that, right? And then I get pulled back into stress, and then I learn to step back, and you just sink into this place of peace, and the world just becomes a much better place to live. So I'm excited to share this practice with people.
Right. And you're still doing the same things. Like your stress doesn't, the outside stress doesn't leave. You still got family, you still got job, you still got stuff, but you're living it in a different way, approaching it in a different way.
Yeah. Maybe the stressors are still there, but the stress may not be in the same way. We're not saying that all life, this is one way that Eckhart Tolle says it. We all have a life situation, right, that has problems and things that we deal with in the day to day. But as we focus less on the life situation and more on our life, or sit in that place, that source of life, that observer that never changes and is constant and isn't judging and isn't stressed and is peaceful, then our life situation, it may change. It may have really difficult things happen into it or happening in it, but we won't be as affected by it because our consciousness isn't inside of it. It's on the outside watching.
Let's go. That's exciting, man. That's good life, is what that is.
And it is a good life. It is a beautiful way to live life.
Okay, so final just invitation here. Observe your thoughts and observe your feelings. And hey, if you want to talk about it, text Tucker. We'll talk text me, you can reach out. We'll chat with you. Like, this is real. We want you to have a good experience, and sometimes it helps to have a mentor here. So reach out if you need to. Sound good?
Thanks so much. Yeah, loved being with you, Nate. Thanks, everybody. We hope that this is all helpful and something that's just very practical that you can try out in your day-to-day and see what a difference it makes in your life.
See you next time.